And Ted, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Sean? Thanks for
Um,
having me.
hey, thanks for being here, man. It's the only way we can see each other now, right?
Exactly.
Well, you and I have a long history, Ted. Um, and the one thing that's consistent with you, though, is you've been in banking the entire time, and I've kind of meandered and taken different routes. What's it like being a banker right now? This must be one of the more interesting. I know you've been through some difficult cycles and some really good cycles in terms of economics and the economy, but right now, of course, is something that you never could have prepared for.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Probably one of the most different times in banking that I've ever experienced. The interesting thing is, regulators in the U.S. require us to be prepared for things like this. So over the years, we've had pandemic plans that were half a page long. What would you do if a pandemic broke out? Meaning, what would you do with staff? How would you protect themselves? Because as a bank, we're legally required to stay open no matter what to provide financial services um, to the citizens. So
Hmm.
we come up with ways. So it's been real interesting going from an exercise that we did 30 minutes every year to meet regulatory requirements. It just came real this year. And walking through it, of course, that half a page of items that you thought through, well, when it really happens, there's probably another 100 things you didn't think of um, that you're having to go through now. Just like, um, I've got departments in the banks that are all located together for synergies, for collaboration, so that they can work together, efficiencies. I had to separate all of that because if one person within that group got the coronavirus, everyone else was exposed to it, and I would lose an entire department. So I had to separate my staff and put them in conference rooms and seminar rooms and spread them out all throughout the bank to make sure that we could still function. So going through those exercises of things you never really thought of that became reality within a week or two.
You know what? ABB's lucky because you're an entrepreneurial banker. You're not like other bankers, Ted. And one of I'm not surprised at how quickly and efficiently you were able to adjust and modify. One of the areas that we've talked about on the show with a number of the businesses that have been coached here live, Ted, is the need for a relationship with a banker. As a banker, can you explain a little bit more about the importance of having a relationship with a banker, building that relationship, and a character kind of relationship you can build that can help life be much easier in good times as well as challenging times?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably times like these, whether it's a pandemic, a financial crisis, something is probably the most important time to have those relationships, not with a banker, but not just banker, but as you said, accountant, lawyer, other things, because things pop up that you've never dealt with before and you have to deal with. But for banking itself, we do look at numbers. Everything has to fit within our models of regulatory requirements. But one of the things that we weigh heavily on as a community bank is the character of the borrower and knowing how
Hmm.
to react in difficult times. If if they run and hide in a hole, that doesn't give us warm and fuzzy feelings they're going to be able to work out of it. If you have that
Hmm.
relationship and you know the person that is going to come in and tell you what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly. And, we can sometimes take those items and help them think through it and reimagine where they need to be and help them get through those times. And, it's that relationship that gives us comfort knowing that they're going to dig their heels in and work really weighs into how much we can help them in some instances. The numbers play into it as well, but definitely character plays a lot into banking and lending money.
So one of the challenges we see with people, there's a nervousness, an anxiousness, bankers, banks, they can make people uncomfortable. Totally understandable. Um, what advice would you have for how someone, let's say they have zero relationship with a bank, maybe they've never even opened a bank account. Possible. And what would your advice be in terms of the first steps to go build a relationship with a banker? What would you recommend for them to create that relationship? Like just the first steps.
Yeah, I think the first step is finding someone that is like-minded with you that you fit with. I mean, it's just like shopping for an accountant, a friend. You know who you connect with, who you can talk to. I mean, it's that same thing. Whenever I bring on a new relationship within the bank, if it's my relationship and they need a banker, then I kind of walk through my lenders to try to match personalities and talents as well. So it's that same thing. You need to go shop for a banker. You need to look for someone that has personality traits that you like, someone that you can communicate to. All people are different. Bankers are different. You got to find one that fits you.
This makes me think about different banks, right? So there's cultures within banks as well. So it's also looking at the type of bank. Like I think of State Africa, and they're innovative, they're creative, and they would be a bank that I can see you could build a relationship with because they're looking to be on the forefront. They're looking to be more consultative and more supportive, where other banks they're just running through the motions, right?
Absolutely. As
And
you said,
so, what are some of the key things to look for in the banks before you even get to the person that gives you a clue that that bank may be a more innovative, more progressive bank that would be one that you'd want to work with, particularly if you're a new business and you're trying to or an existing business is looking to go get some money.
yeah, I think back to your point earlier on culture. The larger banks have more regulations, restrictions, just because as you get larger in the banking industry, the requirements become more stringent. So um, there is a reason for a large bank, because of networks and the amount of services and other items. You may need that. But a lot of the smaller banks, the community banks, we're a family owned bank. We're a family owned business, just like any other business. It's just that happens that our business is lending money, but we're a small business. We have a family that owns it. It's no different from someone that owns a retail shop. Same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
with those type of environments that breed a culture that if you do need that personal relationship on a small level, then community bank may be your fit. It just depends on who you are, what business you run, and what fits you.
Today it's even more hard to create these kind of relationships because everything's going cashless and wireless, and but yet that relationship's still critical. And so the tendency I think people have is to ignore the bank in terms of going into it, building the relationship. It's more about a transactional thing and moving my money around from one account to another or paying for different things. It seems to me that we haven't talked about this, but it seems to me that could be a growing challenge for people, particularly if they want to build a relationship with the bank.
Absolutely. I think times like these bring that back to the forefront. Just as a community bank, we're trying to go more to that digital side for convenience. But I can tell you in times like these, my cell phone, which all my customers have my cell phone, has rang off the wall wanting to run ideas by me going, hey, this is what's happening in our industry. What are you seeing? Because you see several people in my same industry. What are they doing? Who can I connect with? And I've seen more collaboration in the last 60 days than I've probably ever seen in my life, both within my industry, but also within our community and everyone as a whole, which is a good thing.
I mean, well, you live in an area that while towns and cities compete against each other, economically speaking, there is still collaboration. So it seems to me this is like a rallying cry, and I've noticed it on Facebook that within the Tulsa region, people are really coming together. Particularly, and I'm going to bring this up now, Tesla. What you got any inside information for us, Ted?
There's discussions going on in the background. I don't have any personal knowledge of it, but I know several discussions that are being had. it's between us and Austin. Of course, in Oklahoma, cost of living, cost of doing business is so cheap compared to,
Affordable.
yeah, affordable. There you go. It's actually cheap here. Uh, but
Relative.
yeah, relative to other places. So we'll see. I think the biggest challenge for this area in Tesla is trying to find enough workforce all at once to make that happen is probably one of the biggest conversations being had.
Yeah, this is one of the new Terra factories. It's not even a gigafactory. It's one of their newer ones, which is just kind of exciting. It'd be like one of the first Terra factories built. Um, well, California, he's not a big fan of California anymore, is he?
Yeah.
Elon. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to you don't have any real good gossip for us, Ted. Thanks. Next time, get some dirt. When someone is looking for money and they decide I'm going to go to a bank, or they've got started a relationship with a bank, what are some of the key items that they would need to bring to you that would, in paper form, their finances and other things? What is it that would help you with that business to provide some loan, cash advance, some creative option for that? What would they want to bring to you that would help you and
Sure. I mean,
your team at the bank help them out?
some of the main things, of course, are tax returns, personal financial statements. But I think one of the key things that some people think about is that business plan side of helping the banker understand who you are, where you've come from, what your talents are, your experience in it, why this is a good fit for you, and why you have experience and this is going to be a good loan. So I think that explanation and that story of who I am and what I do outside of the financials, the numbers are what the numbers are, but telling that story and bringing that piece really helps us if it's a new relationship to understand and to get to know the person faster.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Because there's no real magical trick to this. It kind of everything has to fit together to make it work.
Exactly.
Well, somebody knows you, Ted. There's somebody saying hi. Some Facebook user out there. You're not even on Facebook, are you, Ted? You do any social media?
I don't.
Zero. You might be one of the last people on the planet who's not on Facebook, Ted.
I just hang out at the lake and get away from everything.
Well, hey, I think it's better in a lot of ways. You don't need it. Don't spend time on something that's not necessary related to the kind of work you do. So, what are you seeing? You're seeing collaboration amongst businesses, but what are you seeing amongst businesses that clearly their model is not going to work? Oh, here, let me back up. I believe we've advanced 10 to 15 years in the last 2 months. Things have changed. 10 to 15. It's a 10 to 15-year advancement just took place in terms of this kind of reality where it's virtual, people buying, the new economy is being formed. We just don't know what that new economy is yet. Just like the gig economy was a new economy back in the 90s and into early 2000. What are you seeing in terms of potential new economies or economies that are moving or business models that are going to go away? And are you seeing anything that's going to be successful at moving forward? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's real interesting. Externally, anything entertainment related, of course, is just devastated right now. And
That's restaurants too, right?
restaurants, movie theaters, hotels. I mean, travel is stopped.
90% decline.
Right. So, I mean, anything that's entertainment, VRBO and all those places are, being challenged because no one's renting space and traveling. And I think it's going to be really interesting if you go down to the local level. Some of the wedding venues and other things that there's no gatherings for the last 60 days. Some of that will come back. It'll probably look a little different until there's a vaccine, but I think people are trying to recreate their business models. And here's an example of what I've seen. I was just committee that we had some grant money, and we're trying to fund some of these small businesses to help them reconfigure, reimagine their business model. And there was a lady with a sewing machine training class. And so she had a place that she rented that had sewing machines, and people would come there and she would teach them how to sew, do other things. Well, of course, you can't have gatherings. She didn't have enough space to really separate people enough to do social distancing. And so she's reconfigured it. She's now sending or traveling around to people's doorsteps, dropping off their sewing machine, and then having a Zoom class, and they all get on the Zoom class and doing their sewing. She's reimagined it. It's costing her a little bit more in fuel and stuff to deliver them, but she's still been able to do business. So it's things like that that, have shifted for a time. She will probably go back at some point to the old model, but I think people are adapting and being pretty creative right now and trying to keep businesses alive.
I've taken an approach where I've created a 1-year strategy for myself. And in 1 year, we're pretty much going to be in the same position. Things might change. A vaccine may have been formed or created, and then it's got distribution and it's not going to go global. So then it's like another year, that we're going to be in some kind of mixed up situation where it's still going to be difficult because not everywhere is going to be figured out how to suppress or manage COVID. What kind of time frames are you imagining related to COVID-19? And when a vaccine's in place, that doesn't mean that it's just being distributed. It's just we've got a vaccine now, and it's possible and still not tested fully, right? What are you seeing in terms of, and what are your banker community saying in terms of time frames?
It's really interesting because some of the most affected that we talked about, the entertainment industry, I think they're taking it more day by day because as they reopen, come out with new CDC guidelines. Here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, we've actually reopened. We've been open about 2 weeks. I went to a restaurant last night, ate out on a patio for, I guess that was my second or third time to be out and actually eat out at a restaurant again. Things are just different when you go to the restaurant. There's no condiments on the table. There's no napkins, no anything. It's a clean wiped table, and you sit down and they bring you a paper menu that's disposed of after you touch it. And it's just a different environment that they're adapting to, but they're adapting to those things.
Yeah, but the question is, like, how long do you think that, because I mean, there's some predictables, right? It's got predictability to it. And we know where other countries have opened up, it's a resurgence. And those countries in particular, many of the countries and the ones I'm thinking of, which include Wuhan in China, Germany, Berlin, and I can't remember the third one, New Zealand, somewhere in New Zealand, they've seen new spikes, and they're far more strict on the containment of the COVID. And now we've reopened. And so the concern of the real predictability of it is it will spike again, and then we'll be back into a closing down situation. So like a double situation. It seems like it's inevitable because of the way that's being managed right now.
Yeah, back to your question on the time frame. I mean, just like that small business owner or restaurant, I think their time frame is taken day by day and trying to figure it out. Once they get into the groove, I think they may look out. I think a year is roughly the time frame everybody needs to understand it. We're going to be in a different world for the next year. That's until, as you said, a vaccine will probably be here within that time frame, but then they've got to ramp up production enough to get it to enough mass to where, if you think back to the polio vaccine, whenever they found it and then everyone got inoculated and things kind of normal. I think we're in that same period of time, about a year, to get things to whatever the new normal is. But I think a year out is what everyone needs to get comfortable with. It's going to be different.
One of the reasons we did, and I just, that's good. It reinforces the way I'm thinking, and I appreciate that, Ted. It's not what I want to have happen, but I think that one of the reasons we did 31 days here with Pat 2 is that 21 days creates a pattern, right? It creates a new kind of way. You change your behavior. And 21 days is usually right around the time. If you go a little longer, it really becomes a change. And so 31 days is partly driven by forcing a shift and a change in behavior, which really struck us ironically like the 19th. We started things started changing, coming together as usually happens, right? In this case, we're going months. And so behavior change is dramatic within people. And it's not simply something where they're going to go back to their old behavior. Even if they want to go back to their old behavior, they're not going to go back to their old behavior because they've got a new behavior pattern, which has become synced in, which is much more homebody, much more cooking meals, much less going out, much more, just not being as busy, I think, is part of it. What are your thoughts around this? Just the pattern changes and behavior changes that we're going to see as this lasts another year. That's a long time, and those behavior changes are stuck now. They're not. The change back now would be some other kind of situation. But this globally, everyone's experiencing something similar. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's interesting. As a banking institution, we closed our lobbies on February 20th. We had to keep, of course, drive-throughs open. That's how we're conducting business. You could call in and come by appointment into the lobby during that time frame and conduct business, but it was by appointment only, so the lobby was closed. So that was February 20th.
Yeah.
Before, spread staff out. We also have probably 30% of our workforce working from home. As a bank, we have never had really anyone working from home.
Right.
So it's a whole new shift. Well, in the last 2 weeks, as things have reopened, we're putting up protective plexiglass shields and getting the lobbies ready to reopen with protection and all the things that we need to do to reopen safely. So in the cost money, but in the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to get phone calls from employees that are working from home saying, "Hey, this is working out pretty good for me."
I knew it.
So yeah, there's going to be a shift in trying to figure out what ones that make sense, because over time, I think the real estate market is going to be affected by this too, because not just us, but I'm hearing more and more that corporations have figured out, hey, I'm paying pretty high rent. People are working from home now. We're still getting productivity. It may not be quite the same productivity, but what's the cost analysis on a large scale building versus a little bit of efficiency loss? Those are the things that I think are going to be weighed that we've never thought.
We there's been conversations out in the front yard here. We have these like community gatherings. We stand in our front yard and everybody talks in their front yard. It's very different. But everybody's communicating. There's community happening, and two of the neighbors were in the lookout. We're just about to sign leases for new space for expansion, and they decided not to. And in fact, they're looking at canceling their other one and having everyone work remote now full time, because they're seeing that it's actually not just a cost benefit, but they're seeing improved productivity from people because they're able to work more hours or more time at their flexibility.
Right. And the younger generations, as you and I are getting old, Sean, but the younger generations.
I'm getting younger, Ted. I don't know if you could see this.
Yeah. So, younger generations have looked at places they want to live and then go find employment.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see even a bigger shift of people going to where they want to live, because you can now work remotely more so, I think, in a lot of cases than we ever thought was possible. So I think there may be a shift in our geography of where people want to live.
It took 20 years, Ted. You remember we did that with Zena, Kristen and I. And it's been there all this time, right? It's been there for 20 years ago was about as far as you could go, because I think we had 8 phone lines into that property to be able to, most in the county, to be able to conduct business remotely like we were at the time. But now it's so much easier. And literally you can live anywhere and work and do what you do. It's a little different with you in a bank because you do have people coming in, but this behavior may shift now.
Right.
Interesting. What do you do, Ted? Like when you're stuck, when you get hung up on something and you can't, you're trying to get through it. What do you do to get unstuck?
Well, there's this guy that has these visual tools really help you out a lot.
Thanks. That's one technique, and it's a very good one, actually. But what do you do? Like, do you use people like me, or what do you do yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Sean has helped us with some of our strategic planning in the past, and through those efforts, we always kick off those with kind of a warm up and get people thinking differently. And Sean always has some of his viz tools that we walk through to kind of open everyone's mind up to get them to think different before we go into strategic planning. So occasionally when I'm stuck, I grab one of Sean's tools and pull it out and do the little refresher, walk through the exercise, and it seems to bring my mind to a different place to start before I need to make some decisions and pathways. But one other thing that, back to the collaboration that I talked about before, I think trade associations for businesses have been a huge help. I can tell you that through the PPP loan program, the EIDL loan program for people in the United States that know about these, that have helped small businesses get through these times of closures, the trade associations have been amazing. We've made so many connections. I've talked to so many of my competitors in the last 60 days about what they're doing, or if we figured out, because the SBA was not real quick in giving us guidance, but if some bank figured it out before another one, then we all collaborated to say, okay, this is how you do it, or this is where you need to go to get the information you need. And it was really something that ramped up quickly. And through that, there were Zoom calls created with our senators, our congressmen, through the trade associations that were talking directly to the Treasury and to SBA to try to get the information as quickly as possible. And so all of that collaboration really worked well. And it also gave you something to, as you said, when you're stuck, go to someone that is doing the exact same thing that you're doing. So take it out of banking in context. If you're a retailer, you know other retailers and owners of them. If you're stuck in what you're doing, go to some people that are in the exact same position you are. They're trying to figure out the exact same things you are, and collaborate with them.
Right.
And
we've recommended associations to a number of businesses that have come on the show. I think we've had like 50 some guests now, and that's a great recommendation. And even if you're in another country, I want to point out for our guests out there, you can join associations that are in other countries. So you could join an association of manufacturing in the US. You could join an association of fashion. You can join an association of marketers, whatever it is, the association of agriculture. And so there's all kinds of associations, but they are definitely a place to connect. And right now, as Ted's pointed out, they're holding virtual remote sessions which you can learn from. So that's just phenomenal advice, Ted. And everybody out there, if you want to text your questions, 202-642-7089. Amy, if we can get that up on the bottom so people can text any questions they have. I'm going to ask one last question, Ted. And this is around the idea of giving it away. We've worked, so for our audience out there, Ted is part of helping found and start what is Startup Cup, going back, can you believe this, 13 years? 14, 13, 14, 15? I don't know, too many years. We are getting older. Thanks for being such a huge support of that as well. That went against the grain at the time in Tulsa. And so historically, we've talked about and worked with businesses to help them understand freemiums and how to give away something so that it helps drive people, and then you upsell them. Today, under COVID-19, my thinking is a little different about this, and that giving away stuff is a way to build a relationship. Not a lot of stuff, nothing expensive, but giving away something that because of COVID-19, because of the situation, that can help people, that would help them in their situation, and then also build greater trust. So there's an opportunity to build a greater trust. And I'm sure as a bank, you're doing something to contribute back in a way that goes above and beyond what you were doing before. What are your thoughts about giving away right now some kind of service, something that would help people in this difficult time? Do you think that it's different than the freemium model pre-COVID-19, and that this is an opportunity to build stronger relationships, that on the post-COVID-19, you've built a lifelong customer, perhaps?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways right now, and I think the most powerful one right now is the giving away of knowledge. And that knowledge, not just with what I talked about with how are we figuring out the new business model and all of this, but some of the knowledge is we found a couple of suppliers that had supplies of N95 masks. And so we're letting people know that, hey, there's a supplier that has them. We're helping the supplier out, but we're also helping people that need the PPP to reopen. Same thing with wipes and plexiglass and other resources and all that. So I think this is a time of, more importantly than anything else, of sharing of knowledge and resources. Resources is the big thing of, you know, we've been able to find X, so here's where you can go find it too if you need it. Because people in those same industries are all needing the same thing all at once. And so being able to navigate that more quickly with those resources, I think, is a huge benefit.
Excellent. But it's knowledge, and I think you're right. It's knowledge. And I just want to say hello to Kelly Soul out there. My Chair Spins, Star. We got a number of people on the show right now, Ted, who you know, and they know you. They say you're looking good, by the way.
Looking great.
For that? Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show, Ted. Our time is run out, and will you come on again? We're gonna continue on at some level going forward, but and this is unscripted. It's about giving away, Pat too, putting it down in the universe, giving away knowledge, giving away resources, giving away access to people that people wouldn't have access to, generally speaking. And so thanks for being here today and bringing a finance and banking perspective that is so important. And you still remain my favorite banker on the planet and are truly an entrepreneurial banker, and a blessing to everyone who gets to work with you, Ted. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Shawnee.
Thanks, Ted. Love you. Talk to you later, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.